That being said, why do you think Nvidia, which works with Google Quantum, is trying to hide how quickly this could be useful? Because I think we are still a long way off when you talk about gate model quantum computers. From your point of view, how many? It and hashtag 039 's going to be a long time, many years, before we see it. While Jensen was right about some things, he missed the point that there are different ways to look at quantum mechanics. I think he only thinks about the gate model, which still has a lot of big problems to solve, instead of annealing, which is quantum computing that we use today. What are some of the problems that are making it hard or impossible for more progress to be made in the areas you just talked about, Alan? When it comes to annealing quantum computing, which is what the systems on the market today do, we can already support business apps on a large scale. But we are still working on making our quantum computers bigger so that they can solve problems even faster. Right now, they can solve things pretty quickly. We in hashtag 039 have been able to solve material modeling problems in minutes that would have taken a lot longer than a million years on old computers. Okay, so we in hashtag 039 re pretty good now. But even quantum computers need to get bigger and faster, and we in hashtag 039 re still working on that. It and hashtag 039 's interesting that you and your share price got caught up in the excitement about quantum computers. There are many other players, and they are all seeing small investors jump in. There is a lot of excitement about the next area of growth. How have the people who own your company changed? You might be giving away up to $150 million worth of new shares. You and hashtag 039 re enjoying it. First, I and hashtag 039 d like to say that the Willow statement can be used for gate models. In fact, we are building both an annealing system and a gate model system. That applies to the work we and hashtag 039 redoing. Putting. Just that with our annealing computers, we don't and hashtag 039 t need to do that anymore since we and hashtag 039 re now in business. We just recently announced that we have over $170 million in the bank, which means we have the money we need to move forward. We will always be on the lookout for ways to raise that amount if we can do it with little loss. We care a lot about how much the stock is diluted. We want to move on to one of the most agreed upon. I was just looking at the numbers by myself. Not as good at charts as you are, but I did look at them myself. Since CES, which is a very small part of this chart, Nvidia has gone down about 8 points. Everyone thought that the alligator jacket would cause a rise, but it didn't and hashtag 039 t. But you and hashtag 039 re saying that there and hashtag 039 a trend here that could lead to a balance for Nvidia. Yeah, so even though there has been a lot of damage in the semis since July, I mean, take a look at Nvidia. It and hashtag 039 's still a clear leader, and the wider S and amp wink with tongue sticking out the stock has almost back to where it needs to be to think, end quote, okay, it and hashtag 039 's a great risk-reward trade, short-term weakness but no longer-term trend damage, end quote, people who invest want to buy this drop. Okay. I have a question for you. Nvidia is a company that makes chips. There are cycles in these stocks. When you look at this stock and hashtag 039 's technicals and see this trend, is there any worry that the cycle will end at some point, causing the price to drop? We and hashtag 039 LL have to wait and see what the stock says. We also can and hashtag 039 t bet against uptrends that are already happening. Most stocks are down between 15% and 16% from their highest points in July of last year. Nvidia is still very close to reaching all-time highs. That being said, it looks like a pretty bad short-term pullback. The most important thing for buyers to learn is to always look at longer-term charts along with short-term price changes. Long-term charts show that this is still in great shape. Ives of Wedbush wrote the following about the impending ban, and quote, there is much more at stake here than just TikTok and hashtag 039 's fate, end quote. As the relationship between the US and China is clearly tense, the Trump administration will soon have to talk about and negotiate tariffs that are very important. Dan, come on in for more. Dan, thanks for being on the show. First, I and hashtag 039, do you like to know how you felt about what we reported overnight? What do you think? It makes a lot of sense to me. Really, it all comes down to this 19th that and hashtag 039, coming up in January 19th. In the end, the Supreme Court supports that ban. The Trump government is working behind the scenes to try to find ways to fix things. Seeing how close Musk is to Trump also makes me think that they trusted each other in China. The fact that they and hashtag 039 sell this without the algorithm makes it look like a very good plan for bite dams. What does this mean for national security or the chance of tit for tat? What is being used to mix public and private items in a new way that the business world needs to be aware of? Yes, I agree. I believe the problem is that the Trump administration does not want this to be made public the day before the inauguration. Because it does get things off to a bad start when talking about taxes with China. So, I think they and hashtag 039 looking for ways to stop the DOJ from taking these steps against Google, Apple, and others instead of just telling them not to. It would be a lot easier if the ban is upheld by the Supreme Court. That must just give up ownership of X, since they have a good grasp of China and the relationship. It and hashtag 039 possible that this is the first step for people in Beijing, but we and hashtag 039 talk more about it on the show. There are going to be a lot of ups and downs in this strong friendship between Trump and Musk. This could be the first step. There are also a lot of questions about competition and what and hashtag 039 okay and not okay when it comes to social media tie-ups. Is it just that people who are close to Donald Trump are kind of allowed to make these kinds of deals, while people who aren't and hashtag 039 close to him will be on the outside and one and hashtag 039 be able to get any possible deals? Yes. And look, you can see that this Mar-a-Lago red line goes from Zuckerberg to other people. I also believe that what and hashtag 039 important is. Hans Dunn works for the FTC. I and hashtag 039 am not saying this is going to be an M and AMP, a party, but now that Dunn is at the FTC, everything changes. I think it just shows that they know they and hashtag 039 have to make some deals in the end. Everyone is vying for the top spot. I mean, this would be a great thing to have for TikTok. If not for the program, it would still be sold. We would, if it were sold without the algorithm and the hands are pushed, it would cost 40 to 50 billion. Musk would likely get money from somewhere else. You talk about fuel. You know what Larry Ellison has to do with it. Clearly a close friend who has known Oracle for a long time. This could go a lot of different ways. Dan, let me know if TikTok is a threat to national security. We and hashtag 039 heard that from people who are going to be working for President Trump, like Congressman Mike Waltz and Marco Rubio, who is going to be Secretary of State soon. If that and hashtag 039 the case, why would they agree to a deal that the Chinese Communist Party obviously wants? Yes, those are going to be some of the questions. One thing I would say is that Trump, who was clearly for the ban, was against the ban here if it was under, say, an Oracle database and some kind of Musk control with oversight. That it should be blessed. You clearly know what and hashtag 039 going on in DC in the ballet. But, this is tricky. It and hashtag 039 all about high-stakes gambling. But it all starts with a tick. The ban is upheld by the Supreme Court. They are going to try to find ways to do it without being seen. That and hashtag 039 why Trump looks to the right of him, I think. It and hashtag 039 Musk. It and hashtag 039 also possible that this could work, even if it and hashtag 039 a partnership. Dan, we can see that some TikTok users are already moving to social media apps that are like TikTok. Because it doesn't and hashtag 039 come with the program, why would Elon Musk want to buy it? I mean, if Musk got TikTok, it would change everything because the value of X would probably double right away. For that reason, I think Musk knows that this is a one-of-a-kind chance to get not only 170 million customers, but also think about what that could mean for content in the Long run. If they use force with their hands during Byte Dance, that and hashtag 039, why they and hashtag 039, LL say what they and hashtag 039, re going to say in public. Behind the scenes, I think things are going in a completely different direction. Also, can they pay for it? They might be able to afford it if they get money from outside sources. I mean, Musk wouldn't and hashtag 039, do this by himself. That and hashtag 039, why there will be a consortium that needs to be accepted before we can take this next step. Those in DC who need to sort of check the box on a deal like this would have to agree to them. And that and hashtag 039, where Ellison and other people in Musk and hashtag 039, circle could have been involved with the deal. What do you think would happen to Meta? From the outside, you must feel, right? It and hashtag 039, clear that Zuckerberg has already looked for work. He has to cook, you know. Now you see Musk as the next step, right? That means Musk and Zuckerberg are on different sides. The trouble is that Zuckerberg wants to be a part of that, but Musk is the one with the unique platform and also talks to Trump behind the scenes. This is the reason why China would only let one person in. Given how well he gets along with him in Beijing, it would be Musk. That and hashtag 039, what matters here. You all talked about it. In other words, Beijing would choose this. To Musk, there is only one person they would personally choose.